Refrain from updating us in the personal life.
You what?
Refrain from the personal life update.
I thought you said the prison. Prison.
No.
Sorry, man. And if she likes to live tonight,
Lee? Is Lee here? Lee? Lee Marie?
No.
She didn't come, eh?
No.
That's a shame. Thank you everyone for bearing with me.
Just tell us when you're going live.
I'm already live. I told you that. I warned you.
Just looking at
Just posting in a couple of places.
yes,
This one and DLQ.
but the different prices.
All right. So we're live on Zoom and we're live on Facebook Live. I'd like to start off by thanking everyone for coming to today's event. It's very appreciated. It's accumulation of everything that we've been doing for the last couple of months. So I usually start off with the land acknowledgement for the Indigenous people. So we would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we are gathered is the traditional and unceded territory of the Abenaki people and the Wabanaki Confederacy. Nous voudrions commencer par reconnaître que la terre sur laquelle nous nous réunissons est le territoire traditionnel et non cédé du peuple Abenaki et de la Confédération Abenakise. Well, it's no secret that many of you, just like me, myself, and many of our fellow Quebecers who have yet to make their voices heard are increasingly unhappy with the way François Legault is running this province. Many of his government policies, some with measures or even full support of the opposition, are detrimental to Quebec, to the economy, to the social cohesion we forged through various trials and tribulations over generations, to our already fragile healthcare system, to immigration, and more. It's time to come up out of the trenches to do more than gripe about it, to rise above pithy comments on social media. We need to show up in numbers, show our faces, and be heard. We need to demonstrate that we are unhappy and, more importantly, we have ideas. This government This government's and years of successive governments, legislative agendas, and core ambitions have had immediate consequences on our economy, our children's future, and our international standing. Look at the CAQ's recent tuition hike, stubbornly imposed on out-of-province students, which led to an immediate enrollment drop, some 30% at McGill and Concordia universities. And this, despite the government's own advisory committee's opposition and the earnest pleas and good faith caution from most of civil society. True to form, Legault's administration's comfortable with its majority went full steam ahead. But here's the kicker. The government, in its drive to leverage out-of-province tuition cash for its underfunded French network, could have easily achieved the same results with a more modest $1,000 increase instead of a $3,000 compromise, which has now had the concrete effect of denying many Canadians' youth the opportunity to pursue their studies and perhaps their future here in Quebec. Whether on an underhanded attempt to limit the growth of the Anglophone population in our metropolis, or an earnest but desperate overreach for funding, this was a complete and utter failure by an elected government showing little evidence of acting in good faith. An undercover cap? The cynical among us, and who isn't a bit cynical these days, would not be faulted for seeing this as the original intention. Create hardship for the institutions, see numbers drop, and follow with reduced fundings. Voila, the generation-old linguistic chokehold on Anglophone education that begins in kindergarten and that recently creeped into CEGEP's level have now entered higher education. Nationalists have always wanted to extend the capping. This out-of-province hike, well, that's just an undercover cap by the CAQ. Monsieur Legault and other Bill 96 supporters also know their harmful, divisive, and counterproductive language legislation continues to wreak havoc. To wit, Walmart's pullback from a Quebec distribution center plan, and of course, the US administration's recent missive voicing serious concerns about the sign and language laws, means the business world will once again be questioning Quebec's suitability as a welcoming business environment. The whole point of our think tank, let's talk about Quebec, or Parlons du Québec, is to explore how we can improve this province that we call home. How can we innovate? What issues are particular to the regions? What would a government with unlimited resources look like? Let's talk about it. Let's look at what we can solve. Let's formulate more ideas and policies and ask the population to decide on the most important to them, the ones they agree and align with. Let's map out a path for a government to listen to what its people want, as opposed to catering to their own ethno-nationalism ambition and power-focused objectives. I made a pledge to hold a rally every month to help my fellow citizens voice their concerns about these and other matters. And I'm going to continue to keep that pledge. I'm also going to keep my promise to bring the message and action outside of Montreal. So we did a road trip. Let's talk about Quebec is going on a road trip. Our rally and meet and greets came to the eastern townships where we are holding, where we are today. And true to what we promised, we want to hear from you what's going on in the region and what we can do to improve it. My name is Mark Perez. I was born in 1981. I'm a child of Bill 101. I went to French school. My first language is French. I learned English afterwards. And I do realize how important English is to the community to Quebec. And because of the rich history of Quebec, the Anglophones are part of its history. And what I'm noticing now is that Monsieur Legault is trying to erase any trace of English across Quebec. And for his reasoning that French is under threat, based on the last census of 2021, 94.1% of the Quebec population could speak French or have a conversation in French. So with this constant repetition that French is under constant threat, and it's a bogus reason, and people are slowly coming to realize that. So why do we have a think tank? It's because we've been let go by our political parties, plain and simple. They've all been playing us for pawns. They've all made promises that they've never followed. Reading the history, the Anglophone community, the allophones, the minorities have always asked the Liberals to enshrine into the Constitution our rights. And everybody always said, well, you have the Canadian Constitution, which will protect your rights. And with the notwithstanding clause and Bill 96, Bill 21, Bill 40, Bill 23, Bill 15, we all are witnessing what that piece of paper, what those rights are written on that piece of paper is worth. And it's nothing. Because by using the notwithstanding clause, they've literally erased any obligations to serve the community that have been here for over 100 years, hundreds of years. It's like, so we're talking like 700, yeah, 7 generations, 700. So with that being said, I'm very upset with what's going on because we love Quebec. We did everything that we could to stay here, to help and promote. And all that's being done is we're just being pushed down and rejected. And it's not fair to us. So I want to know, and we want to know, everybody who's a member of the think tank, it's open to everyone. There's no specific party to it. There's no affiliation to any political party. We're not with the Greens. We're not with the Liberals. We're not with anyone. So this is really, everybody could come. We build this melting pot and we put all our ideas and we recreate this democratic environment where we're building a website where all the ideas are going to be placed and everybody's going to be able to participate in a voting system so we could better understand what's the priority of the province and the regions. Now, the way that I see things is that we have a really big problem, and in order to solve it, we need to know what the problems are to provide the solutions. And there's nobody better than you to provide us with the solutions because you know what the problems are. You know where the logistics are having difficulties with. So with that being said, we're not really here to hear me speak or anybody else, but I'd like to introduce Scott Kilbride, who is in charge of immigration and housing. I'm in charge of politics and managing any ideas or concepts and redistributing the message that you have to the rest of Quebec and to the world to make sure that we are heard and that people understand that what we really need. And with that being said, I'd like to introduce Mike Crawley, who is security and events. So the next event will be organized directly by Mike Crawley, and we are going to get better at it. I've heard a lot of positive feedback today, where we have to prepare at least a month ahead of time. So I would like to come back to the Eastern Townships in a couple of months during the summertime, and I'd like to have a better coordination with Mike as the designated person that can organize the next event, okay? So I know that a lot of people wanted to be here. It's one of the biggest things that we keep hearing. A lot of people want to come to this event. A lot of people are frustrated and they just want to be heard. And that's why I'm here. That's why we're here. That's why we drove an hour and a half, and depending on how fast you drove, about an hour. I'm not pointing fingers, just thumbs. But we're dedicated to this cause. We've been doing it for 3 years. For those that don't know me, I got involved with the Task Force on Linguistic Policy in 2021. I became a volunteer, then I became director of marketing and communications. I didn't know how to do a commercial, but we did a commercial, which we got positive feedback from Impératif Français, and it did a big splash, but we didn't capitalize on that success and made more. And then when Bill 96 passed, we went from being the Task Force on Linguistic Policy. A group of us got together and we formed the Canadian Party of Quebec. I was one of the candidates for Darcy McGee, which is my region. It covers Côte-des-Neiges, Hampstead, and Côte-Saint-Luc. And we did what we could to get elected because that was the next branch, the next step, the next logistic step. We got a lot of votes, we had a lot of success, but at the end, everything just crumbled like anything else. But in going door to door and talking to people and meeting my locals, citizens, I got the bug. A lot of people told me, oh, I have a problem with this, I have a problem with that. So I started helping people fix their issues. And ever since then, I've been very involved locally. Like if you Google my name, Mark Perez, you're gonna see me in town hall meetings and councils and stuff like that. And one thing I've always been is very consistent. So with that being said, after the party, I rejoined the task force as a marketing person to raise awareness about the court challenge. So that was very important because now that we saw that no political party was backing us up and the federal had thrown us under the bus as well with Bill C-13, the courts were the only option. So I rejoined with the task force and basically we raised the money we needed to launch the initial court challenge. And then we raised even more money for the injunction that was launched, I think maybe January, February, I don't remember the date, but it was very recent, in the last couple of weeks. So with that injunction in place, it's going to slow down to hopefully stop any future laws, because as we know, Mr. Legault has promised 50 different points that he wants to implement. And so far he's implemented 3. Tuition hike, healthcare reform with Bill 15, and well, I know that he's working on Spotify, and on Spotify now there's more.
The language on signs, was it? Or,
oh yeah, doubling the size of the descriptors and stuff like that. Yeah. So there's so much going on. It's really hard to keep on. So I know that there was 3, so that means that there's 47 more. Hopefully, with this injunction in place, it's going to slow down to stop these.
I think it's important also, though, that you mentioned that because we're against Bill 96, it's not that we're against the French language, we're just going after the overreach of Bill 96.
That's right.
People don't know what it really entails.
Yeah. So yeah, Bill 96, so that's actually what I said on Alias Macos on the interview in CGAD, is that bottom line, people's main primary concerns are always the economy. Healthcare, education, immigration, and so forth and so forth. So when you ask them the question, like what's causing this? Well, we can't find employees. People don't want to come here. Like, why don't they want to come here? Well, there's the 6 months to learn French, and then after that, they can't continue in English. So doctors are leaving, businesses are leaving. I have a friend who's keeping stats on the number of businesses that are up for sale. So usually there's about 50 businesses a month that are up for sale. Now we're at 339 businesses that are up for sale, and that could, on the bottom scale of what he estimated, that's about $500,000 worth of revenue that would be generated for the province that's not being generated. We don't even know how much these companies really do generate on the long run. So 339 businesses with all the different businesses that they deal with all the suppliers and everything, it's a domino effect. So we're losing a lot. And that's what mostly people are concerned about. And the underlayer problem is always going to be Bill 96. It's always back to language because Quebec has one of the worst retentions in all of Canada. Basically, any immigrant that comes here, only 11% stay. So 89% leave. So that's why we're having such a difficult job market. That's why we don't have the nurses. That's why we don't have the doctors. That's why we're missing a lot of people with the teachers and what they had. Scientists and stuff like that. Everything that's needed to make Quebec strong. And the going after the universities is even worse, because Montreal is one of the most unique cities in the world because it has a trifecta. We have the universities, we have the research, we have the employment, and we have the training. So by weakening the universities, and he automatically reduced the number of students that are coming to do the research here, and then that's going to have a trickle-down effect. And we all saw that as well when he removed $100 million to Dawson College for the medical facility. So we need more doctors, and yet the school that was supposed to provide them is no longer getting the funding that they need.
The nursing, was for the nursing program. They were going to build a proper clinic at Dawson College, and they were going to staff it with the nurses from the nursing program. So what they figured is, with some supervisory personnel guiding the nursing students, they would run a clinic for all the students, so the students could go in and whatever they have for a problem, it was medical, they could have an initial investigation done on them right away, okay? And it would have been right there. So the nursing students would have had more practical experience from doing it. It would have helped decongest the emergency rooms, because instead of going there because they didn't have a doctor, it was going to be in an area where it wasn't affecting the healthcare system per se. So they were kind of being taken out and put onto a triaging system, I guess, whether or not they really had to go or whether they could have had a small follow-up. So it would have improved the passing rate for nurses because they would have had more experience when it came time to do their exams. It would have helped the situation in the emergency rooms a bit because it would have taken away some of it. And it would have given students access to some frontline medical assistance right away at the school. And what they said is, and this is not a lie, why is an English CJEP getting that? We'll take that money away and we'll spend it on the French CJEP, without knowing what it really was about. And when a nurse is trained, they will treat you no matter what language you speak. They're not, it's not a language issue, it's just a health issue. And they wanted to that's what they wanted to do, was just get the nurses out and get them to be as proficient as they could. So a lot of stuff is done with a blind foresight, and it's not really looking at what the impact is going to be, and they're not looking at what the reality of the situation is. So that was one factor. But the other thing is there's so much overreach in Bill 96. If you have a business of 24 employees or more, someone can say that you are communicating with everybody in English, and they can be you up and walk into your business and seize your computers and your cell phones and basically shut your business down because you can't have access to it because they've seized it. And so now your business is going to crash without a warrant. They don't have to go to the judge and see the judge to get a warrant to be able to do this. They can just go in. The police can't do that if they think you're selling drugs or you're trafficking people.
Yeah.
But they can do that if they suspect that you've been communicating with people in French. And that's a really bad language other than French, excuse me. So, I mean, that's part of the overreach. Another thing is, let's say they go to your psychologist and you've had some problems, some issues with mental health, and you've been seeking help to go and get it done. They can go in and go through all the medical records. They seize all the files and they can go through all of them.
So the pharmacy is
Yeah.
So the
Medical privacy,
medical confidentiality is breached.
Doctor, patient.
And all this is done through using the notwithstanding clause.
You're talking about a police state.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, that's, yeah, but, so, anyway, but that's like, people don't understand what the overreach really is, okay? To want to go and protect and promote the French language
It's a facade.
It's great, it's a very
Yeah.
good thing. It's a good thing to do, but this is, like you said, it's a facade for vindictiveness.
Yeah.
It's an attack. Now, so, I mean, these are things that we have to try and overcome. And
It's an attack on civil liberties.
yeah, but you cannot go and just whine and complain. You have to come up with solutions, okay? And you have to be able to say, look, yes, you can do all this, but you can't go and seize people's livelihoods.
Yeah.
You can't go and let people see confidential information that's medical. And those are things that have to be stopped. They don't care. Okay? And that's it. And the biggest thing is when they take away your rights, the first time is hard. The second time is not as hard. Third time is easier, and it gets easier and easier and easier. So anybody who thinks, well, it's just, just a few people, and it's not going to touch me, it eventually trickles down to being you.
Mhm.
Because people get used to abusing their power. So
Yeah.
it's a very important thing it doesn't matter what language you speak, and nobody's trying to take away the protection of the French language, but there's a difference between protecting yourself and going and aggressing somebody else. It's not the same thing.
Yeah. So yeah, very good points, and that's the consequences of Bill 96. But again, we're here because we're going beyond Bill 96. Bill 96, like I said, is the underlying problem, but right now we need to discuss what does the Eastern Township need? How can we fix it? What's the troubles that you guys have been feeling here, and how can we assist in making it better for Eastern Townshippers?
Maybe fears also, fears, people don't know what's coming.
A lot of people don't know, that's
So
correct.
there might be fears, so maybe you can express some of your fears with, with everything, the legislation that's coming down the pipe.
Does anybody have a question?
Who lives in the Eastern Township, say?
How are you being affected?
How are you being affected?
My son spent 21 and a half hours in the emergency room yesterday.
Oh,
sorry to hear.
sorry to hear that.
I mean, he's okay.
Okay.
His bicep went and caught his daughter, ripped his bicep. Fortunately, he wasn't in very much pain, so I just kept his arm like this. 21 and a half hours later, he was told, you'll get a call Monday morning between 8 and 8:30, go see an orthopedic.
Oh, wow.
That, and he said, at least I wasn't in pain. There was a lot of people in there, and he was telling me about the different people he got to meet. And one little kid, I don't know, 8, 9 years old, whatever, hadn't been eating or drinking for 2 days. He was talking to the parents. And they waited 17, 18 hours before they got it. And this is a young child, The justice said, he's 34 years old, because, he's to take care of himself. That is a big problem. Big problem with someone like me. My name is Lee Schoolty. Sometimes I go into the hospital, go into the emergency, whatever, and I say, well, we got to with you. And I'll answer in English. I can speak French, I understand French, I read French. Not so much writing, but and I'll answer in English. And I'll get comments like, avec un nom comme Lee Schoolty, parle pas en français. Yeah, I speak in French. But when it comes to medical, legal, financial, I want it in English. I was brought up in the States. English is the language I understand the best.
You have a right to be served in Quebec. When it comes to a medical issue, be served in English or French. That's a right that is in the Quebec, I believe it's the Quebec Constitution, the Civil Rights Code, and
I
also the
believe
Canadian.
that, I believe that's gone with 96.
I don't think that, but that's been challenged because of that.
Being
It's
challenged.
been challenged because of that.
Being
You won't have a
My
right.
son, despite his long wait, he did say, because he's bilingual, but he did say everybody served him in English. He goes, or tried very hard to. So he's very appreciative of that. Because like when, they're explaining about muscles and torn and everything else.
Having worked in the medical field, I mean, as a paramedic, it was pre-hospital, but it was still the same thing, but there's two things that you want to be able to do. When you have a patient, you want them to feel confident in you, and that you create a rapport together so that you communicate well. And you want to be definitely capable of understanding what the problem is that they have. And you want them to be able to understand what you need from them. And if you can't have the communication, then a lot of little problems go undiagnosed because the information didn't get through. So it's very important. My wife was an emergency room nurse, and if they had somebody who was Greek or Italian or Chinese or Russian or Chinese, whatever it was, they would find someone to come and translate so that the communication could be done. So they would put the other person at ease a little bit, that they could understand a little bit what's going on, because whether or not you understand it, when they are able to talk to somebody and get the proper communication answers, it relieves some of the stress that they're under. When the stress is gone, or relieved somewhat, they'll do better, because it's one factor drawn from what the issue is that they have. So it's important. And now you have some places where they just don't want it. They could, but they don't want
to, yeah.
And it's like, this is not a place for politics. It's a place for healing. Okay? And that's where you're supposed to have the communication come through.
It's access to information.
Access to
And the
information.
right to have access to information. Recently, we've had trouble in the townships getting doctors. So my husband and I have been going to the States we can get served, go to a clinic, get seen by a doctor or doctor practitioner within an hour. No appointment.
Wow.
$100.
Wow.
I was standing to get my prescription at Walmart in Newport, and while I was waiting to speak to the pharmacist, I look up and there's a sign on the wall, and it says, "For non-discrimination and access to information, to be sure that everybody gets the information that they need, just point on the sign of what language you would like to be served in, and we will provide it."
Yes.
Non-discrimination,
Yes.
not protecting a language, or promoting to only speak one language, it's ensuring that everybody gets served.
Lucien Bouchard said it best when he said, when you go to the hospital, you're going for a blood test, not a language test.
Yeah.
He was a nationalist to the end, end of the whole leg. But he knew where to draw the line. He knew, there's some things you don't touch.
I've never seen such a government that goes out of its way to discriminate against the English community or anybody that's not. They make a point of not being able to speak, and this isn't new. I had a business, I still do, but one of my businesses, I spoke to a CSST agent. She called me, and I couldn't understand what she was talking about. This was 2010, and she kept talking to me in French, and I said, "I'm sorry, but I don't understand you." And she says, "Well, is there anybody else?" I said, "No, it's my business. My employee's here, but he has worse French than I do." And she said, "I'm sorry, but I'm not allowed to speak to you in English." No accent, no French accent. She was English.
Mm.
But back in 2010, they were being told that they weren't allowed to speak to you in English. And one employee. This isn't a big company.
But I think that's some of the problems that people, like corporations and people and they think that it's the law, that they're not allowed, that they can't do it. I've had this thing going with Costco. I'm a pain in the butt, I know,
No,
I write these letters and
no.
complain and stuff.
But that's what we have to do.
He's called me twice, because in my mind, I pay the same amount of membership as everybody else. I was out in Saskatchewan where my son lives in Regina, and there was English pamphlets and French pamphlets side by side. Cool. Come to here in Quebec, and there's only French. And I asked, and they said, oh, we're not allowed. So I wrote back, and they said, read the law.
Yeah.
You are allowed.
Yes.
As long as it's available in French, and you can put out the English. We don't have the room. Sweetheart, you got this whole wall. You know, like, there's a ton. Anyways, and they called me twice to discuss.
Well, I can tell you something.
It's, but sorry, but this is the commonality, and the big issue is that the law is being misinterpreted, okay? And we know this from all the stories that we've heard, and a lot of people reach out to us. And yes, it's overreaching. So the question is, what's the solution? So let's say we win an election, we can write whatever law we want. As far as I'm concerned, now that the CAC government has shown its intentions and true colors and the way that they're willing to affect, I think it's time for an Anglophone rights to be inserted into the Constitution, Quebec's Constitution, because we're not like any other country. Okay, Quebec is a province. It's still a province of Canada. Yes, the Francophones form a nation, but they're still within Canada. And it's really up to us to continue to remind the federal government that they have an obligation to uphold. And it's written that everybody has a right to have the education in their language, and that they can go talk to their doctors in their language. Language is a tool for communication. It should definitely not be used as a weapon. So with that being said, from what I'm hearing, is that we need to enshrine something in a constitution that guarantees the rights of the Anglophone community.
It is in the Canadian Constitution, but they disregard it also.
As far as I'm concerned, with the notwithstanding clause, they basically are wiping Canada off the map.
It has emasculated the Charter of Rights.
The Charter of Rights, yeah. It's not worth the paper it's written on.
The feds had the power to do so, and they still do.
That was to me.
The disallowance, it's finished.
Or even pushing it to the Supreme Court.
Yes. Disallowance, and then that's called. So, and that's the other thing that's very interesting, is that there's this official government thing on Facebook, and it keeps promoting how you could get bilingual services, and like a bunch of us keep going on and we always say, except in Quebec, except in Quebec, except in Quebec.
Even for Green Canada,
Yeah.
I went to apply for a grant there for thermal pumps or whatever. And because I live in Quebec, I couldn't apply to them. I had to go through Rencontre, which application form is only in French. So it's like, really? So I again write many letters to the M&A, and he goes, well, you know, when you need help to fill out, and it's not that I needed help to fill out the application form. It was the point that it was the principle. This is supposed to be a Canadian grant, yet because I live in Quebec, I only get the application form in French. I didn't ask for it in French.
Canada gives too much to Quebec to govern. It's the same with unemployment, Service Canada. There was programs. I tried to get a program to further education, but Canada gave that program to Quebec to govern. And the program I wanted to take was at Algonquin College in Ottawa. Well, Quebec wouldn't see that. He said, no, you can go to Saskatchewan. I said, well, the program isn't offered in there. The only program that I saw that it was offered was at Algonquin College, and they wouldn't accept it.
Mike, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, okay, another thing, you know, some things are very petty and they've got absolutely no bearing on the protection of the French language. Like when I fill out a medical form at the McGill University Hospital Center, the questions in English are written in half the size of the questions of the French version of it. So you've got people who are getting older, their eyesight isn't as good as it used to be, and now you're well, you know, if you're Anglophone, you don't get to read the question because we put it too small for you. And people, it's just, it gets to be like a petty vindictiveness that
A
is,
superiority.
well, it is, but people have not thought through what it's really doing.
They don't care.
It depends on who, but it depends on who, but a lot of people don't realize what it's done. And we have to get that back to them. Do you realize what you've been doing? Do you realize what that does? And it doesn't protect your
It
language.
places one up, the
Yes,
French up here and us down below,
Yeah.
which goes back to discrimination. We
It does.
are less than,
Yeah.
not equals.
And it's also,
But the thing is that you have to go and you have to bring it forward to them and you have to bring it out and say, look, this is what's going on and it's not right and it's not going to protect you. It's not hurting you.
well, because they've been working on the regions. They've been working on the regions for quite some time, and I mean, if you look at the French scores in francophones in French schools in the regions, they when they graduate, if they graduate from high school, they basically have a grade 5 or 6 from Montreal level of comprehension and reading of French. Okay, so they have very, very low scores. The regions have a very different mentality when it comes to education, and because they're in the regions, for them the most important thing is to help the parents and work on the farmland, or make money, or help the family grow. So their priorities are very different, and somebody brought it up to me, to my attention, and basically said, look, all the regions are majority francophone. When they come to Montreal, it's like they're visiting a different country. They're not used to this multiculturalism. For them, it's like a culture shock. And all their lives, they've been taught in the regions, well, Montreal speaks French, and you could go there, it's a French city. We hear the mayor of Montreal claim that Montreal is the French metropolis of North America. So they come up with all these things, and even the thing that upsets me the most is that the leaders of the QS, the PQ, and whatnot, they're always, the state. We're in the state of Quebec. No, Quebec is not a state, it's a province. But that's how that's the words that they're using, and they're repeating to the people in the regions. That's all they learn. They learn that Quebec is a state, so when they come to Montreal and there's English, they're like, why are you guys speaking English? We're in Quebec. So it's not their fault of the education that they get, but that is what the government is doing.
You have to break the cycle and the discrimination. You go back to Rosa Parks, and when she was kicked off the bus, she said, why do you push us around so much?
There you go.
And the bus drivers, or the cop said, because that's law.
That's great.
The government authorizes, and there's a lot of French people, I have a lot of French francophone friends that don't like this law, but they're afraid to speak up against because then they get pulled out. I think it's our responsibility as the English-speaking community to break this toxic environment of hierarchy that we're all equal, we're all human. Language doesn't come above a human being. We're supposed to be respectful and give dignity and equality to all people.
Absolutely, and we see that it's a Quebec issue.
international
Yeah, but,
language.
But even if it's an international language, even if it's an international language.
You don't have to be bilingual to be able to communicate
Exactly.
with other people.
Yeah.
It's giving everybody the respect and dignity, regardless of language, regardless of where you
I'm not
come
using it on
from.
a.
Because as she
We-
said,
I'm
we've
saying
lost-
that they're limiting the opportunities.
Yeah, they're discriminating against their own.
People, it's like the Roman Catholic Church is keeping them down on the farm.
Yeah.
So, any
Was.
vibrant community tends to make its citizens, empower their citizens, okay? And doesn't do discriminatory laws where it hurts all the communities
Correct.
that they're part of because of an ideology.
How do you retain power if everybody can speak English and French?
you have to work at
You
it.
can't.
no, you can't, you
You
can't.
have to work at it.
So if you can't speak English, Chinese, whatever, you can't leave. You gotta vote for me.
Yeah.
That's their principle of
It has
their
no
policy.
idea if they hate the English or hate the French.
But they don't-
It's power.
It's
They don't,
politics.
they don't.
But
realize-
I agree with you that a lot of francophones do feel stuck, and you know, I hear that very often. It's a very big comment that I got a lot, and you know, when the tuition hike was done, the French universities joined the Anglophone universities in solidarity and said, hey, you know, what you're doing is you're going to destroy this whole ecosystem, and don't do it in our name because we don't need this. You're doing this on your own for your own selfish reasons, is what the Francophone universities are saying.
They're being suppressed.
They're being suppressed. So the big question is, how do we,
I'll get through this, but I was about to say, we've got a situation where people are starting to lose empathy. Okay? You can't look at somebody and say, oh my God, look at this person, what's happening to them. Then you have to go, they want to say, well, are they English or are they French? Who cares what language they speak? Everybody bleeds the same way, they hurt the same way, okay? They suffer the same way.
All you have to
And
do is
nobody
make
wants,
your choice.
nobody wants to see anybody suffer or hurt or bleed or anything like that. It's like the empathy is starting to fade, and it
It's
shouldn't.
gone already.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's
So-
not. It's not.
Well,
gone.
I think-
It's not gone. But look, I've been to places where people, down in regions, it's all French. I speak. I have fun with them. We joke. We laugh and everything. And they're just wonderful, wonderful people. And that's who they are.
Yeah.
Okay? That's who they are. Okay? Then you get political ideologies that start getting spread around again. You know, people
Well,
spread
that's
around
what we heard at the
their
beginning, yeah.
ideologies in order to control and manipulate for power. But Monsieur and Madame and Mr. and Mrs. Québécois, whoever you are fine people. And it's not really within their personality or whatever. They're good people. It's just that there's political ideologies that create
Yeah,
these
I agree with that
things.
tension.
Speaking up, we're subjected to what the government is doing.
yeah.
Yeah.
They have no empathy.
Yeah,
That's
so
fine.
one of the strategies that I wanted to talk to you about that we are discussing is that we want to advertise on the French networks. That's one of the things that we learned with the task force, where obviously they're gatekeeping the information that's being sent. So the one thing that they can't gatekeep is the commercials that run on the radio and the TV, because all that is run by the federal government. So if they try to like stop a commercial or prevent a commercial, that's going to bring more news than anything else. So they wouldn't want to do that. So that's one of the strategies that we have to do. I have the donor who's willing to give the money if we're willing to put the work into it, and he's willing to financially back us up, but he wants to see that people financially back us up. So when I was with the task force and we raised the money, I used that money as a fundraising tool to bring in more and more money. So between the party and the task force, I could say that I raise between $150,000 to $200,000. Okay, so it's there. The possibilities are there. We need to be spreading the message. We need to get people more involved. We have weekly meetings every Thursday night. We have weekly meetings with Mike Crawley and myself, where we give a financial update of what we're spending, our expenses. Like just this event here costs about $600. Okay, and that I just gave it out of my own pocket. And as many of people know, for the last 2 or 3 years, I haven't been working that much. I'm like on my wife's support, financial support. Without her, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing here. But I believe in it so much because if this keeps going on, it's going to break apart all the families, and that's what I hear the most, and it crushes my heart every time I hear it, where grandparents and parents are telling their children just to leave because there's no future here. And the worst part is that they cross over the border to Ontario, and people are speaking French and English, and they're interacting and stuff like that, and none of this exists there.
You keep leaving, and the problem never gets fixed.
That's right.
The root of the problem. And the root of the problem is the discrimination, the hierarchy of having, and I know and I understand history and what happened and where we got, but we need to, and we can't rely on the Francophone community to do it because I don't think they feel comfortable, but we have to call out that discrimination and we have to put them in.
I have to disagree with you. We can count on the Francophone community to help us, but we have to get the message through because they don't get that part of the
I don't
message.
think the message will get through in
It
my
will,
lifetime.
but
It actually,
it takes communication.
so that's sorry, Mike. This is where
Let me-
things become very interesting,
Yeah.
okay? Because when we did the French commercial, people said, oh, we're not going to get anywhere, we're not going to get any attention and stuff like that, and trust me.
Yeah, you get attention,
We
but
get-
are you gonna give them enough to be able to speak up? They'll be behind you,
Yes.
but they're not gonna speak up on our behalf. It's
They'll-
our responsibility to speak up on our.
They won't speak up publicly, but they'll speak up at the voting booth. And that's where we really need them to speak up, okay? Because that's what the PLQ is all about.
But it's still, even at the voting booth, it's still that cycle. It comes around and it comes around.
Yes.
Yeah,
But that's why we want to
Is
build.
to go to the regions, to have a town hall like this with francophones, speak French to them, okay? And Mark is very good, his first language is French. And get francophones from there who are amenable to the message, who keep their ears open, show them, okay, that this is turning into a state, a Quebec, that doesn't even respect their rights, okay? Their democratic rights, okay?
Right.
This government shoves everything down everybody's throats. Doesn't listen to anybody. When you show them how they're suffering,
Yeah.
okay, by not being admitted to any school of their choice, okay, whatever language.
There's a lot of people that just don't care.
But they
Yes,
don't care.
but-
Why don't you educate them?
So the thing about them not caring, whenever there's an election, there's always a right or left, and there's always people who are on the extreme that will never be able to get, never, okay, because they're diehards of either, and even if the other one does atrocities, they don't care. They would rather just stay in their lane, and that's all. But there's a big moderate, like there's moderates that really want. And you can see that because of the fraction that the QS has created, the PQ has created, the CAC has created, the Liberals have created, and the Green Party have created. So if you take all those 5 parties, okay, and you tell them, okay, let's look at what's the global agenda of everyone. What are they trying to achieve? Okay, we can build something so strong, and it's from what I'm seeing and is that the CAQ brought in a new form of governance and a new form of politics. So that's why the PLQ are left in the dust, that's why the PQ are left in the dust, and that's why maybe the QS is surviving just a little bit because they don't have that penetration to the youngs yet.
Do you know how you're going to bring the people in to actually come out and vote?
Yes,
Because I know a lot of people that
yes.
you can't get mobilized.
Okay, so here are a couple of ideas that we've already been thinking about that are outside of Bill 96. First of all, we want to remove income taxes for people who are retired and 65 and older. So like that, they could keep whatever money that they pull out, no more income taxes and stuff like that. We want to reduce, well, you explain this one better for the housing, reducing the cost of permits.
Well, you gotta look at it, what, between 40 to 52% are mom and pop rentals. In other words, people who own duplexes, triplexes, sixplexes. Like me, I own a duplex. We both work for a living, but then the rental comes in, they say, oh, the rents are too high, but you just raised my taxes 14%. You raised my insurance 12%. You raised everything. So how can we come to a common ground where both sides will get it? Because now you've got, the plant comes up with your plan. Oh yeah, we're going to create social housing, and well, developers are going to pay the fine and rent at the high price instead of making social, because it makes no sense. So we have blue bonds sitting there since 2014.
Does everybody know about the Blue Bonds project?
Yeah, since 2014, it was handed over to the city of Montreal. The provincial government says, here, take it, develop it. If you sell it, give us half. Well, it's been sitting there since 2014. But now, big shopping complex is just being built down the street. Well, guess that property is prime land. It's going to be sold, and it ain't going to go for public housing. Where we could create a public housing as a government, fund it. You could put 25 to 3,000 families. Now, if you create that, what's going to happen to people who are renting? Those 3,000 places will become empty. Now you got a competition to bring down their rents, so it's going to be a cycle. We get millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars a year for housing. Where?
We are
Where's it
in
going?
dire straits for affordable housing right now. There's people living on the street, not because they have no money at all, because they don't have enough money to be able to
afford rent.
Exactly.
So that's another solution that we're proposing. Walter, you have an idea? Do you want to say?
Well, it's more of a comment.
Sure.
I'm not gonna solve all your problems.
Yep.
Over time, I've seen, because I was quite involved in municipal politics, small town, half an hour east of here. But since I've been younger, so teenager up, I don't know if it's a push, but centralize, move to Montreal, and encouraging, and even the governments, like the white zone, green zone. We can't build a house next to anywhere in Burr, in municipality. Because, well, it's green zone, you can't build there, unless you own 250 acres.
So they're making it harder to build housing.
And people tend to move to the cities. I mean, it's a natural phenomenon maybe, but like, I know some of the smaller communities are having trouble to survive. First of all, roads are better, cars are better. Used to be when I was young, man, you got sugar too. It was like twice a year, Christmas shopping and maybe once for summer. And we're only 25 miles. But I mean, things have evolved and that's normal, but still, trying to think of what was my point, but now, there's so many people in Montreal, the bigger urban centers, and I'm not saying it's terrible, but there's this big push of putting people tighter together and densifying population. The land is so expensive, it's worth more than the house that sits on the land.
Yeah. So that's because
That's driving the prices, because and another thing with this green zone, a few people in my area are the same idea. Makes me mad every time I go to Montreal, and that's fairly often. First it was Existant, when I saw them develop that. And then now across, on the right hand side going in, all the high rises there. And I can't build a house on a stone pile out in there.
Yeah.
afford it. The little municipalities, they didn't foresee it, how this was gonna restrict their building. I mean, that's away from the language thing, but still,
It doesn't have to be,
It does.
it does not have to be about the language.
And then I saw it when the COVID hit. People in such a dense area, densely populated, seeing like with the nursing homes and whatever, it's spread. I'm not saying you could have avoided it if everybody lived in the country. There's probably not enough country. I'm not saying I'm against not protecting farmland, grow crops to feed us, but there's got to be a little more compromise.
Yes.
You can stick a house or two on there.
You know, or a little more common sense, or, well, like, this is not decent land for, don't even grow a tree, you know, type thing, or, well, you know, it's.
Yeah.
Anyway, and whatever it seems like right now, I don't know right where you live, but not far from probably from you are, St. Bazile or McMasterville, they're fighting this.
The battery plant.
As the government changed the rules.
But
My
you
father
know,
owns 900 acres.
they're putting.
And we couldn't do
they're-
squat with
they're-
it
they're-
because, oh, there was a couple of little unit areas.
It was CIL before. That property was CIL. Canadian Industries Limited then.
Yeah.
It was polluted, like, they used to pollute that river
Yeah,
terribly.
whatever.
But I would like to hear
The
what you have to say
thing is,
before.
You know, if there's big money,
Nothing?
Mark,
that's my,
Sorry? No. They didn't want it. They
You
didn't-
wanna get some pizza now, or?
Yeah, there's pizza by the way, if anybody's
another
hungry.
point
We can bring it down, right?
is,
Go, Mickey.
I went to a French school for 2 years because it was a thing to do. That was a long time ago. It was a lot of quite a few French. There is all of things quite bilingual. When it came to the son she was talking about who was in the hospital recently.
I was brought up, I'm French Canadian, I was born in Sherbrooke, my parents French, but I was brought up in the States when I was born. So I did all my schooling there till like grade 10. I came here and I was about halfway through grade 10. So when I went to register my son for school, she goes, you know, I said, well, I did English school, and she goes, oh, great, where? I said, Pawtucket, Rhode Island. Oh, that doesn't count.
Yeah.
Fortunately, he had done just enough years in
Because then she asked, well, yeah, but I heard your husband went to a French school for a while.
Yeah.
And we all know we just snuck in
Mm-hmm.
to allow our kids, because I thought, and my parents thought they were doing the right thing to
In Pawtucket?
be bilingual, go to a
Yeah.
French
Buzzy
school.
Memorials.
No,
And,
Affect generations.
So one of the
we
proposals.
almost lost the right, and now I told
So-
the French radio station.
So I'd like to say one of the solutions that we want to provide for that is to reopen English eligibility paper for all of Quebec. So anybody who wants to apply for English eligibility, whether they're francophones, allophones, minorities, whatever they want, they could sign up for it, and then that's it. They're enlisted into the program, and then once the registration period is over, then it goes back to the rules of Bill 101, where you have to be 6 months here, 6 months there. But it's a big issue because a lot of parents, I just want to finish on this topic, is that some parents are sending their francophone parents are sending their children to an English CJET, specifically to learn English and to be inside an English classroom with a teacher teaching in English, and they can't. They're being taught in an English CJET in French, and all their courses are done in French, even their English class, and therefore they're not learning the English that the parents signed them up for this university for, and they're francophone parents, and they want to get. So one of the things that we are proposing is going to be to reopen the English eligibility paperwork, so that everybody can have access, and then that's it. Since the government lost track and they don't know where, and there's 400 students that are on the waiting list, and they don't know where their paperworks are, they're sitting at home and stuff like that. it's going to simplify the process for everyone. Start back at zero.
Some of the human rights United Nations papers that I've been reading, Francophones in Quebec claim that they are a minority within Canada, which is true. They say that the minority should be given a right to learn the majority language so that they can function all across the state, regardless of where they go. And this is basically what the Quebec government is doing, is discriminating against their own by not giving them equal opportunity for, as in the rest of the community.
Now imagine we ran an ad. Imagine we ran ads doing that, saying that. They're going to see that we're here ready to fight them, and that's what's important.
I asked, and she was willing to say something, so I'm just gonna ask her what her take is. I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
My name is Jessica.
Hi, Jessica.
Hi, Jessica. Okay, Jessica's gonna give you a take on what she heard. You might like it, you might not like it, but we're gonna listen to what she says because
That's what we're here for.
perspectives are important
Very.
in order to.
Yes. Well,
In Spanish.
so I've heard there's good points, there's points that I don't really agree with, I gotta mention, and I think it's about the language. I speak English, he doesn't. Okay, I'll agree to this.
L'autobus.
No, but his reality is not mine.
Yeah.
I was brought up lucky enough that my grandparents are English. I went to English school. So I went to primaire secondaire in English and then went to CEGEP University in French.
Okay.
So I did both and I saw both, and it's different mentalities of each. And if you talk to someone maybe a little bit more like him, of his generation, well, if you go back in the future, he might have felt like the English were overpowering the French. And that's what they use as a, how can I say?
Justify today we're cattle.
Yes, exactly. They're using it in this way to not feel oppressed as much, but I don't think, you talked about a balance, but you need to make the French people feel welcome and equal.
Absolutely.
And not oppressed. And sorry to say, but some of the English are stubborn, but some of the French are too.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah,
So here's my take on that. We greatly disagree on the past. Everybody has a different idea, perspective, education on what happened, how it happened. But what we all have in common is that we could all work together for the future.
And agree together on the future.
And that's where we're at, and that's why this think tank is so important, because
Things never get solved.
Yeah, we see it with Ukraine and Russia. We see it with the Palestinians and the Israelis. We see it with all countries and religions that exist in this world. It's always these little things that are being used as a weapon to keep us divided and fighting each other, instead of, like, Quebec has so much potential. So much.
Powerful.
Oh, so powerful.
It's beautiful province.
Oh my God.
It's beautiful.
People come here just for that, you know? And if we work together, and that's what I really want with this think tank. I don't care about the power. I'm willing to change the electoral system if we form a party and we get an electoral system in place. If somebody can give me the details about the alternative electoral system, I know that it exists. I've read a lot about it. I've heard there's a lot of issues about it, but there has to be, we have to keep working on it, but I'm willing to implement it.
I'll let you speak to my son. He'll tell you all about it.
Perfect. So this is what we need. We need to have this conversation. We need to have more people. We will come back. On va revenir. Et j'ai besoin de votre aide. I need your help
Et on
to
a besoin
come.
de votre assistance.
I need you all to participate in our Thursday meetings. Go to the website. If you don't know it, it's letstalkabout.quebec. That will bring you to our landing page where there's a list of different policies that you can be part of. If there are policies there that you don't find, that are missing, just send me a message. I'll add them. And we are developing the website as we speak. We're going to be adding a lot of context to it. This video that's here, it's recorded. It's going to go on our YouTube as unlisted, which basically means that only people who have the link can access it. And it's also going to go into our Facebook group. And very interestingly enough, we have a separatist who's trying to join the group. And I asked him, why do you want to join the group? Because if you're just here to disrupt or to watch what we're doing, we're not here for that. It's everybody in the group has to participate, and I'm keeping an eye on everyone who's participating into this project. Because even the separatists have a feeling, a need that's just not being met. But if we listen to them, like we are doing now, and we are empathetic and we understand what their situation is, we could start mending and working together. And it's like I said, in the 1970s, 30% of the population was able to have a conversation in French. Today, we're at 94.1%. The people who stayed dedicated their lives to learning the French and being part of Quebec culture. All of a sudden, to be told by our own premier that he is the premier of everyone, but then there's some cultures that are better than other ones. Right off that, it just destroyed everything.
Cultures on one.
Yeah.
And it's making, like this past summer, we were in cross Canada, Victoria, BC to St. John's, Newfoundland. It's everywhere we hit some, you don't have any accent. You find out you're from Quebec. Well, no, I'm English and I grew up there. My family's been there 200 years. We decided to stick around. And after a while, and then some I'll call them outside Quebecers. Well, what's it like? You know, we hear you can't talk English there. You know, we have a bad reputation, and it's hurting. I can see I don't have numbers, but a lot of the people I talk to very hesitant about coming to Quebec to visit.
If I can add to that, I have one of my best friends that she immigrated here from India. She has now moved to Ontario for the only reason she spoke French. I could not even pass the exam they were giving her to speak French, to be able to stay here.
That's right.
And I'm like, I was born here. I speak French in the language.
Your
But,
first language.
but the question is like, and I told her, I'm like, you should leave.
Even,
I can't, and she was very smart, learned really quick, and
It's,
but
Well, of
fait
course.
on purpose. À un moment donné, trop se complacer. Oui, je comprends que si tu vas au magasin, tu peux pas être sûr à 100% de pouvoir servir en anglais. Je suis d'accord. Mais médical, tout ce qui est légal, finance, c'est trois domaines que tu devrais pouvoir. Puis, il y a assez de monde bilingue que je peux pas croire que tu peux pas avoir. Moi, je travaille dans une entreprise internationale, basée ici à Sherbrooke. Si tu fais un nombre d'employés anglophones, ils peuvent pas aller travailler ailleurs parce qu'ils ne parlent pas français ou pas assez bien le français. Ils sont restreints à rester au même emploi, avec aucune possibilité d'avancement. C'est beaucoup, là. On est 400 employés ici. Puis je te dirais que la majorité, c'est le cas.
C'est ce qu'on entend beaucoup. On entend ça très souvent. Et on dirait. La façon que je vois la stratégie de la CAQ, c'est que en créant ces problèmes, les gens ne veulent plus venir à ces universités. Déjà qu'ils ont perdu leur inscription de 30% APC. Alors qu'est-ce qui va se passer? C'est que maintenant le gouvernement va dire « Ah, vous avez 30% de moins d'étudiants, maintenant vous avez besoin de 30% de moins d'argent. »
Oui.
Et ça va continuer, ça va continuer, ça va continuer. Qu'est-ce qui va se passer? C'est que Amicale et Concordia vont joindre, ils vont devenir une université. Alors maintenant, au lieu de payer 2 universités, maintenant c'est juste une. Donc effectivement, ce qu'ils sont en train de faire, c'est qu'ils essayent de garder le monde ici parce qu'ils veulent s'assurer que quand ils investissent dans les étudiants et tout ça, qu'ils restent ici parce que sinon, s'ils leur donnent les outils pour quitter, ils savent qu'ils vont quitter. Mais le problème, c'est que nous savons que les étudiants qui apprennent vont quitter de toute façon. On ne peut pas retenir quelqu'un ici, et spécialement quand c'est des étudiants qui apprennent à l'université, eux, ils vont apprendre les langages très facilement. Donc, c'est comprenable, mais ce n'est pas une raison d'enlever les droits des gens qui emmènent. C'est pour ça que la vision que nous, on a, c'est que nous améliorons, c'est que nous améliorons la qualité de vie pour tout le monde. On veut arranger le système de santé, on veut arranger le système d'éducation, on veut que tout le monde ait ces opportunités pour grandir. Et il faut leur donner des raisons. Le plus que les gens ils détestent venir ici, et c'est comme tu as dit, ton amie qui était indienne, elle est restée, elle était au Québec et elle a parti. Ça fait partie des 89% de monde qui viennent ici et qui quittent.
Oui.
Parce que c'est trop de problèmes. Alors, le gouvernement, et c'est ça le problème depuis les 70 et 150 dernières années, c'est que chaque gouvernement a essayé de gérer quelque chose, mais ils l'ont empiré. Quand les libéraux ils ont sorti avec la loi 22, les francophones ils ont dit « Ah, c'est pas assez sévère ». Alors quand le PQ ils sont venus, ils ont fait la loi 101. Qu'est-ce qu'ils ont fait? Ils ont pris la même trajectoire de la loi 22 et ils sont partis même plus loin. Alors on aperçoit qu'il y a toujours ce besoin de chaque gouvernement de suivre ce que le gouvernement passé a fait. Alors c'est comme si voter ne change rien.
Mais tu penses, quand tu vas voter, tu ne vas pas juste voter pour un point.
Non.
Tu sais, tu vas pour un ensemble, puis tu vas pour
Okay.
c'est le moins pire.
Oui, mais regarde à la façon que ça se produit le moins pire. Okay? Les libéraux, ils étaient en pouvoir pendant 8 ans. On se tanne après 8 ans de la même chose. Alors qu'est-ce qui se passe? On va au contraire, on va aller pour les conservateurs, parce qu'on pense que les conservateurs sont mieux. On a les conservateurs, ils ne gagnent pas la majorité aux premières élections. Alors il y a une deuxième et une troisième. Alors là, ils ont un mandat pendant 8 ans. Après 8 ans, on en a marre parce que on a marre de tout ce qu'ils sont en train de faire. Alors le pendule retourne vers les libéraux. Et c'est pour ça que la CAQ a changé les affaires. Parce que la CAQ, qu'est-ce qu'ils ont fait? C'est qu'ils ont pris tout le monde de différents groupes et ils ont dit, regardez-nous. Nous, on a uni tout le monde, on a fait une coalition de libéraux, de conservateurs, de verts et tout ça. Alors, donnez-nous la chance. Alors, on s'est tanné des conservateurs, on s'est tanné des PQ, on s'est tanné des libéraux. Qu'est-ce qu'on a fait? Moi, j'ai voté pour le courant 2018. J'ai pas honte de le dire. C'était la personne que je croyais qui était sincère quand elle a dit « Je veux améliorer l'économie du Québec. Je veux améliorer l'éducation. Je veux. » Et j'avais tellement marre de toutes les autres politiques. Je lui ai donné la chance. Ok. Alors, maintenant, on a appris notre leçon. Alors maintenant, c'est à nous d'arrêter ce cycle. Et nous sommes comme dans un cycle abusif. Et nous sommes à l'étape où maintenant toutes les parties sont dans le apologetic phase, dans la phase de forgiveness. En tout cas, on se comprend. Donc maintenant, ils vont dire n'importe quoi pour qu'on vote pour eux. Et c'est dommage, Parce que tout ce qu'ils vont faire, c'est qu'ils vont essayer de regagner la confiance du public. Et ils vont venir avec des trucs de peur. Ah, vous voyez, maintenant le PQ sont en train d'augmenter, ils vont parler d'un référendum. La CAQ est en train de préparer un référendum pour le PQ, comme ça quand le PQ va gagner, alors il faut voter pour les libéraux. Et si vous ne votez pas pour les libéraux, il va y avoir un référendum. Et je crois que la meilleure suggestion qui est venue, c'était de M. Kilbride ici. On devrait mettre la question de référendaire sur à toutes les élections, les périodes d'élection. S'il y a une participation de 50% et que 51% veulent un mandat de séparation, qui gagne l'élection doit commencer à préparer un référendum, la question référendaire, pendant leur mandat. Alors avec ça, nous allons savoir où le peuple veut vraiment aller. Alors maintenant, ils peuvent plus. Alors une fois qu'on a ça, si ces critères ne sont pas rencontrés, ils ne peuvent plus parler de séparation parce que le peuple ne veut plus. Ils ne veulent pas. Ils ont dit pendant cette élection, ils ne veulent pas. Ils ne veulent pas qu'on parle de référendum. Et avec ça, ça va enlever cette contrainte de séparation. Une autre chose qu'on voulait faire, c'est qu'on voulait donner à Montréal un statut spécial pour que les entreprises qui veulent venir ici pourront être libres des conséquences de la charte de la loi 101. Parce que si on fait ça, on va amener beaucoup plus d'emplois à Montréal. Et si les autres dans les régions veulent faire la même chose, ils pourront avoir accès à ces outils-là. Il faut avoir des restrictions comme ce que je disais tantôt, c'est que à cause le housing, l'habitation, merci. Parce qu'il y a un grand manque, et vous voyez, c'est ça le Canada, c'est ça le Québec, on s'entraide. Donc, avec l'habitation, maintenant il y a beaucoup trop de maisons qui sont allouées sur Airbnb, des trucs comme ça, et il y a du monde qui ont besoin d'habiter, de vivre, ils ont besoin d'une habitation. Il faut avoir une loi qui vient et qui dit, quand il y a un grand manque, il faut que la moitié des listes sur Airbnb deviennent des habitations mensuelles. Parce qu'on doit trouver une solution à ce problème-là. Et il y a tellement de choses. Et c'est pour ça que c'est important de participer dans notre groupe de réflexion, parce que c'est ces genres d'idées. Je ne sais pas si ça va fonctionner ou pas, mais au moins on le met sur Internet et les gens ils peuvent venir y participer, ils peuvent discuter, ils peuvent dire tu n'as pas pensé à ça, tu n'as pas pensé à ça, j'aime cette idée, j'aime pas cette idée. Et ça devient une conversation. Et là, on va s'unir et on va construire le Québec du futur. Parce que peu importe ce qui s'est passé dans les plaines d'Abraham et tout ça, on ne pourra pas changer ça. Mais on peut absolument changer le futur. Et pour moi, une autre chose qui est très importante, c'est de donner la puissance aux communautés de Premières Nations. Il faut les réintégrer parce que les pauvres, on vient juste de remarquer qu'on les a massacrés dans les écoles et tout ça. Pour moi, c'est dégueulasse ce qui s'est passé. Mais je suis Canadien et je comprends que j'ai hérité ce problème. Alors, je suis, non seulement, en partie, je me sens responsable pour ce qui s'est passé, même si je n'étais pas là pendant ces années-là, mais je ressens une envie de les aider à se réétablir parce que c'est la seule chose. It's the good thing to do. C'est la bonne chose à faire. Et il faut le faire tous ensemble. Et c'est juste un Québec uni qui va réussir. Et c'est ça notre objectif. Parce que les choses que j'entends du monde, on ne devrait pas vivre comme ça. On devrait tous être capables d'avoir du manger sur notre table. Le fait que le GO s'est donné une augmentation de 30 000 $, quelqu'un comme moi, je ne vois pas ça comme un problème. Mais qu'est-ce que je vois comme un problème, c'est quand il vient, il dit aux enseignants, aux infirmières. Désolé, on n'a pas d'argent pour vous, mais on a 830 millions de dollars pour arranger un toit que personne ne veut. On a 7 millions de dollars pour inviter une équipe américaine pour jouer au hockey. Quand l'équipe canadienne de Montréal a dit on est prêt à le faire gratuitement, tout le monde devrait réussir. Tout le monde devrait être riche. Tout le monde devrait avoir du manger sur la table. Personne ne devrait avoir faim. C'est incroyable que nous sommes dans une civilisation en 2024 où on n'est pas capable de régler ce problème-là.
It all starts with respect, Mark.
Yeah.
It's that simple. Respect across the board.
Puis je crois, je vais l'ajouter là-dessus, c'est aussi, c'est tellement des mentalités ancrées. Je vais prendre un exemple. Moi, j'étais à l'école française au primaire. Je vais au camp de jour, j'ai des amis, à l'école anglaise, je vais au camp de jour, j'ai des amis qui vivent dans ma rue, qui parlent français. Qui sont mes amis? Mais j'ai des amis à l'école. Puis là, les deux classes ne parlent pas. C'est des enfants, là. On parle d'enfants dans un camp de jour. D'une dizaine d'années, mais que là, je devais choisir à chaque jour avec qui j'allais jouer parce qu'ils ne pouvaient pas jouer ensemble, parce qu'un est anglophone puis l'autre francophone. Donc, c'est tellement ancré dans les gens, c'est pas personne qui disait, c'est des enfants qui sont supposés tous jouer ensemble. C'est de détruire des mentalités qui originent de loin.
Et on va le faire, on va y arriver. Je sais, je connais la méthode, je sais comment le faire, j'ai la stratégie, nous avons la stratégie, nous allons lancer une campagne très prochainement. Venez, everybody speaks and understands French, right? Yeah? Okay. So we're going to have a campaign that we're going to be launching and discussing this Thursday. It's Je suis Québécois. And everybody can send a video of them speaking in French or in English that they are Quebecer and where they're from and how they love Quebec and they participate in Quebec. And we're going to make a montage out of that and we're going to broadcast it on the web and we're going to send a message out there on the Francophone networks to make sure that they understand that we speak French, we want to participate in French, and that we're being put down for absolutely no reason, and that we welcome the conversation and that they're welcome to come and eat at our table and talk to us, and we could all figure this out together. Thank you. So, are there any more questions? No? Questions? Nothing? Okay. Good.
I agree with everything I've heard today. It's going to get hard. And I got no magic.
There's a lot of work to do, but
Yes.
it's gotta start. It's gotta get done.
We have to reverse.
And I will say this summer especially, but even in the past 10 years since my son's been in Saskatchewan, we've been there at least once